Hello, and thank you for watching my story about how I became a user of a sea mineral fertilizer called C90. Now, while I'm particularly interested in hay and forage production, this is a message that could benefit anybody from a large producer to a backyard gardener, so just hang in there. Now, I grew up on a small family dairy farm, nothing special about that. And when it came to pasture and range management, why, we was pretty conventional. When we had a weed problem, we sprayed for weeds. And when we needed a boost in production, why, we just added fertilizer. It wasn't that we had that much invested in conventional technology, it was basically all we knew. So after several years, I became re-involved in the family farm and volunteered myself to bale some hay for Mom's dairy operation. Now, she was using about 14 to 1500 bale a year, and this piece of property that I was assigned to take care of was only producing about 800, maybe 900 bale a year. So one of my first priorities was to try to reach that 1,500 bale limit. Just to break 1,000 bales was going to be a big milestone. So my first year out in the field, I think we came close to about 980 bales, and that was about all we could do. No matter how hard we tried, that was simply all we could get done that year. So the next year, we decided we was going to do something. And the problem with conventional methods was that year fertilizer was pretty much cost prohibitive. So that was out. But I'd seen or heard something about sea mineral fertilizers, and with it being fertilizer, I pretty much assumed, okay, it's a fertilizer that will increase the yield. That was the main thing I was after. What I didn't realize, though, was I had a second problem, and it was with hay quality. Now, we'll get into more of that here in a little bit. So that next year, I used the sea mineral product. Well, I used C90, and I did not get a yield increase just by the way I was using it that year. But I remembered some of the background conversation touching upon the hay quality issue. So, I'd spent some money on this project with really nothing to show for it. So I was a little bit embarrassed. So to redeem myself, I brought up the hay quality issue. So my mother, being the careful accountant that she is, she marked it up on the calendar the very day that we started feeding that hay. Well, dairies are kind of perhaps a unique operation in this respect, because the milk companies will come and pick up the milk every other day. And when they pick it up, they grab a sample, and of course that's to make sure that the milk's safe for public use. And you also get paid by some of the lab results, like how much butterfat's in the milk, or what's the protein content. And right away, it was noticed that the butterfat ramped way up, and that the protein ramped up just as well, which was quite a feat, because we had always, ever since we had started in the dairy business back in 1977, had a problem with reaching a good payout on butterfat. And even through herd improvements, through artificial insemination and various other feeds and mineral, just about every trick in the book, we never could sustain any increase in butterfat. So it was a very welcome surprise to see a substantial increase in both protein and butterfat. There's also a third number that dairy farmers pay a close attention to, and that's the somatic cell count. And as with the herd, of course we had bred genetic improvements in there, mainly for production and for butterfat and protein, of course, but also longevity. And so at the time that we had carried out this experiment, the average age of the dairy herd was rather old. And so the problem with older cows is this somatic cell number, especially in the wintertime, tends to be high and is a cause for concern. Somatic cell indicates herd health, and of course older cows are more susceptible to health issues than the younger ones. So along with the benefit, when we started feeding this hay, why the benefit of increased protein and butter fat, we also saw the somatic cell take a rather steep dive. And that was at a time when we would normally see the somatic cell count go up. So this was a very welcome surprise. And I was informed that the C90 treatment was going to be an annual event. And I really had no idea what I'd even done. So I had to get myself educated on it. Now, here's a point that I came to realize. If you don't know how nature works, how are you going to be able to work with it? And so, you know, you're very prone to doing things that may lead to a lot of frustration. So one of the first books I picked up was this book called Sea Energy Agriculture by Maynard Murray, MD. He was a medical doctor writing on agricultural stuff. Now that's a story for another day. But in any case, this is a book that I recommend anybody to read. First off, it's not very thick. It has quite a few pictures in it. And the print is not all that big. So this is a book that doesn't cost very much, that you can read and that you can understand. And I can honestly say that this is the book that changed my way of thinking on how I do a lot of things, and particularly my hay production. But what the C90 did was address all the mineral issues that you hear about, but you have no idea how to address. This fixed that problem. Now, I still had an issue with hay production, so with what I knew in this book, I knew that I had to address some other issues inside the soil. And so here we have teeming with microbes. Now basically under the ground you have an entire ecosystem, and it appears that if this ecosystem is not in very good shape, you're not going to grow very much stuff, and what you do grow won't be of a very good quality. So what the C90 did was give all these microbes the mineral shot that they needed, and with a few soil problems that I addressed by, well, I was able to identify soil problems by what weeds was out there. And so here's a book about weeds that you can control without having to spray, and it does work. But basically I looked at the weeds, I saw that I had several soil problems, and I was able to address a few of them with just a simple field renovator. And in 2015, we hit the hay field again, and my folks shut me down at about 1,400 bales because frankly we ran out of place to stack all this stuff. In 2016 was an off year for me for some personal reasons, but again in 2017 I'd shut the baler down with about 1,700 bales on the counter. Now, this is funny. To say that I shut myself down at 1,400 bales and then at 15, 16, 1,700 bales is unreal. Usually the most I could get was 980. But anyway, I can happily say that the yield has increased and the hay quality has increased. Now, while we was able to notice this in the milk, you'd be able to notice this in beef cattle by taking your calves to market. They'll be healthier, they'll be bigger, they'll be a much better quality animal. For the gardens, the produce that you produce out of it will also be of a higher quality. This is a product that works for me, and it will work for you.